Welcome to day 19 of the Berkademy lab. We're using AI as a kind of mirror, not to tell us what to think, but to see how we think. And today, well, that mirror showed me a pattern coming back, and it was incredibly, almost painfully predictable. So the day starts out great. I mean, it's early, I've got that fresh morning energy, and I make a very specific, documented commitment to myself. I even recorded it. And at that moment, it felt absolute, totally binding. This was the plan, and at 6:47 a.m., it seemed unshakable. But then the day happens. Fast forward to 2:23 in the afternoon. After hours of work, a dozen meetings, and just countless tiny decisions, that unshakable plan, it met reality. And there it is. The exact kind of validation-seeking question I swore I wouldn't ask. But here's the kicker, the really critical part. I was completely aware of what I was doing, even as my fingers were hitting the keys. No excuses. 7 hours and 36 minutes. The AI timestamp? It doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't judge. It just tells you the time. And it gives this precise, unflinching measurement of the gap between the person I am with a full tank of gas and the person I become when that tank is running on fumes. And this brings us right to the heart of today's documentation, something I'm calling the relapse point. It's that exact moment where knowing what you're supposed to do just isn't enough to actually make you do it. So let's be super clear. This isn't about forgetting you made a promise to yourself. It's about a much more primal, automatic system in your brain just completely overwhelming your conscious, deliberate intention, but only when your resources are totally drained. And this collapse, it wasn't some sudden, out-of-the-blue event. It was a predictable, four-stage process. You start with total clarity. Then you get a trigger, maybe a stressful email. You might even try to resist for a second, but then collapse. The mental energy to fight that impulse just costs more than the resources you have left in the tank. Honestly, this is just our brain being efficient. It's doing what it's designed to do, which is to save energy. It's veering off that new, difficult, energy-intensive path and just defaulting to the old, well-worn, beaten neural path that costs basically nothing to follow. Okay, so let's dig into the mechanics of this because the research is really clear. This isn't a moral failure. It's a predictable biological cascade. You've got two really powerful models that explain this perfectly. First, the strength model, which basically says self-control is like a muscle. It gets tired. Every decision you make all day is tapping into that same limited resource. Then there's the balance model, which describes this tug-of-war between our deliberate brain and our automatic brain. And guess which side wins when we're tired or stressed? Yeah, the automatic one, every time. And what's really wild is that the research shows that just having a plan, and implementation intention, as psychologists call it, that only predicts about 20 to 30% of what you'll actually do. The other 70–80%, that's all about how many resources you have available in that specific moment of decision. And this, right here, is where the AI stops being just a tool. It becomes this objective, unflinching record of my cognitive state, totally free from the stories I might want to tell myself about my willpower. When I look at my chat history, it's not a sudden break. It's a clear timeline of my resources getting progressively depleted. The prompts at 9 a.m. are careful and thought out. By 11:30, they're more frequent, a little sloppy, just checking things. And then by 2:23 p.m., bam, straight up validation seeking. The data trail is undeniable. You could even see it in the words I used. I found myself typing things like, I know I said I wouldn't, but, which proves I was aware of the collapse as it was happening. That little data point right there stops me from rationalizing later that I just forgot my commitment. And that's what the AI mirror does. With its cold, hard timestamps and chat logs, it forces you to let the facts in. It makes you accept the reality of how you actually performed, instead of clinging to the more comforting story you'd prefer to believe about yourself. So the most important part of this whole thing is not that I failed. It's about how we frame the data that this moment provides. This is the big shift, moving from self-judgment to objective analysis. So let's look at this number one more time. 7 hours and 36 minutes. This is not a measure of my failure. It's a measure of my actual capacity under real-world stress. It's not a grade. It's a baseline. It's just a data point. See, the real cost here isn't breaking one small promise to myself. The real cost is that we consistently plan our days around an imagined version of ourselves, that fresh, optimistic morning version, instead of the documented reality of who we are after 7 hours on the job. And this right here illustrates the entire shift in thinking. 7 hours and 36 minutes isn't how long I should have lasted, it's how long I did last. That's not a judgment, it's a measurement, and that becomes the new baseline to work from. So as we wrap up day 19, just remember, this experiment is about documenting, not necessarily solving. And today's documentation leaves us with this really fascinating, kind of ironic situation. Here's the irony. I still make that same commitment every morning, and I fully believe I can keep it. And I still break it around 2:30 in the afternoon. The only thing that's really changed is that now I can see it coming. My awareness hasn't stopped the pattern, but it has made it predictable. And because of that, I've stopped calling it a failure. I've started calling it by its real name, 7 hours and 36 minutes. That's the name of the pattern. That's just the name of my own regulatory architecture operating under real-world conditions. This changes the entire question we need to be asking. It's no longer, how do I try harder or how do I have more willpower? The real question becomes, what specific conditions depleted my capacity in those 7 hours and 36 minutes? It's a shift from focusing on willpower to focusing on my environment. And that, well, that's the question we'll start digging into next time.